Welcome to the Watercooler podcast, your number one podcast on all things organizational change, with your hosts Marcella and Bartwin from Defiant.
Welcome to our Watercooler podcast from Defiant, where we talk about everything organizational change related that is not found in guides and textbooks, I reckon. It's that sneaky conversation that you have with your coworkers that are shown what is really going on in an organization. And today we are lucky to have our Dutch fellow, Derk-Jan. Welcome
Hi,
to
everyone.
the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome to have you. I will do a short intro, but I have to say, I'm definitely not that great in doing intros, so feel free to add whatever you want to add. However, I did peek on your LinkedIn to make sure I pronounce everything correctly. You are a consultant, a value delivery advisor, Agile coach, team coach with a background in test management, and more than ever, you are an author of 9 books.
That's correct so far.
You're a guru. You're the big one. You're the big fish.
That's what you think, yeah. But never mind. I can live with that, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Hey, we're very excited to have you on our podcast. What we want to have a conversation about today is something that we talked about with the three of us before. At the moment, we see this thing with Agile going on, that Agile seems to be disappearing in organizations and in the job market. If I look at the changes here in New Zealand, we see less Scrum Master roles, less product owner roles. It falls back more on the project management, the delivery. The Lean Six Sigma is coming up more often, but the Agile thing seems to be disappearing. Even though there are a lot of reasons to this, which I do think is good to dive into a little bit further on, one of the major reasons that organizations are turning away from Agile is that with the current economical state on a global level, organizations are way more drawn to stop experimenting and trying things out. We now need to deliver and get things done. And apparently somewhere along this whole Agile industry way, we have missed the boat to tell that Agile is actually perfectly capable of creating that.
Yeah.
I want to have your view on it because Barwin and I are obviously in New Zealand, and this is a little bit of what is in New Zealand going on. Could you tell a little bit more? What do you see in the Netherlands? What do you see in the market?
Well, I don't really know yet. So I see something shifting, but I'm absolutely not the authority. You might call me guru, but I'm not a guru in economic trends. But despite what you said, if I'm looking at the jobs that are seeking, I think you had a podcast all about, or a blog on your LinkedIn about only the real operational tasks and no longer the coaching things. I still see a lot of organizations asking for Scrum Masters and team-related stuff, but the transformation-related stuff seems to be gone a little bit. So I still see a lot of Agile team coaches and Scrum Masters being looked for, some RTEs, which is more an operational role, of course. But really transformational coaching seems to be a little bit off. And there's also a little bit shift between governmental and non-governmental. So it seems that the commercial parties have been there and the governmental parties are starting up. So basically, if you want to be a transformational coach, you probably end up somewhere in a governmental organization because they're lacking behind a little bit. But yes, and that's why we chose this topic. There seems to be something going on, and things seem to be shifting quite quickly as well. And where I think like 2.5 years, 3 years ago, people were really organizations wanted to be flexible, and maybe due to COVID as well, they want to be resilient, and business agility seemed to be a thing. Yeah? We want to be agile, we want to have business agility, we want to be fast to the market, we want to have stakeholder involvement, that kind of stuff. And that seems to be a little bit, in my opinion, but this is not the authority opinion in this, seems to be shifting a little bit to the back. And rather than being the first on the market, maybe organizations want to be sustained and just want to survive rather than being the first with a new feature. They just want to be the one that has still the last breath as we go along. So something like that seems to be changing, and that means that there's less room for transformational coaching, agile coaches that say, "Hey, let's make happy teams." And put it very bluntly, I think, where like 2, 3 years ago, and then you may see if you recognize 2 years ago, like, oh, I'm gonna make happy teams, I'm gonna be real flexible, etc. And then people, yeah, cool. And now it's a little bit like if the coach comes in, let's make happy teams. Yeah, can you not just make them work?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you recognize that a
So
little bit?
I think so, especially in New Zealand, when it comes to your argument of saying we want to have stable companies that we are sure will produce and will come back to the core business of our company so that we survive. The catchphrase I've heard is survive till 2025 around here. So I think that speaks volumes. The interesting part is, though, that Agile started to bring about a sustained pace of incremental value in delivery. If companies were to go back now to say, listen, we want to go back to basics and just make teams work, does that mean, in your opinion, that potentially we've missed the boat there? We did not make the teams work in a sustainable manner, and we have not delivered essentially on that promise.
Maybe we did, and there have always been discussions about agile not working or the agile implementation not working being a big thing. So one of the topics they want to discuss today is like, can we present agile if transformations don't sell? Can we present agile in a way to say if you apply the right practices, then you can still save some costs or reduce some costs and sell the transformation that way? And one of the first replies that I got from a peer was, so like, yeah, but very often we said that the transformation wasn't working or agile wasn't working. Well, in fact, the implementation of agile wasn't done right. So if we want cost reduction, all the practices that we can apply without having to do the full agile transformation, that it still works. And I think that's a scary but also a very nice way to put it. And to come back to your question, I think that's related because you say like, why is that? Is that because agile doesn't work? Did we fill in the promise, or did we not manage to make the promise worthwhile by having good, proper implementations or transformations of the agile? Like in principle, it should be working. In principle, it should be reducing all kind of costs, of course, and improving the agility, so the flexibility and the resilience of the organization, and the quality and the happiness of the teams and all that stuff. But in practice, it doesn't.
So it just delivered on the happiness part and none of the rest?
Well, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Some organizations that might, yeah. But I have to say that I don't think that you get a lot of applause and a lot of buy-in if you start walking around in organizations by saying like, I'm going to make happy teams and that's all I'm going to do.
I do feel like that has been, from my experience, a little bit what I've seen happening when we talk about agile coaches coming in. It's often been, I now need to protect these teams and make them feel happy and motivated and okay, and delivering something becomes of a less high priority.
Yeah.
And I think if that is true, which I will question to you if both of you see that as well, if that would be true, then we were in an economical situation years ago that was pretty much doable because most organizations were still pretty much making revenue, growing from a financial perspective, whereas now the downside is there. We're not doing as well. Organizations are struggling to keep pace and are struggling to keep their revenue as it was. So the whole context has shifted. And therefore, if we then had agile coaches promoting psychological safety and happy teams and less on the delivery, then agile has the potential to become not useful if it's all about delivering or cost reduction in that sense. Do you feel like that's part of it?
Yeah, maybe, but once more, I think it's the full circle, right? Agile should be in general taking care of all those things.
Yeah.
So it's not agile that's not working, but if people don't want the first sites or don't understand what it should be bringing and they don't want to buy it, maybe we should twist it a bit and sell a different story.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to do different work. I'm trying to sell my work in a different way, I think, a little bit, due to this shift that I see.
So that would mean that maybe we need to use more the word agility, because I think that's probably more related to what the overall story of Agile is, instead of Agile being a framework implementation and making happy teams.
Yeah, so like we want the outcome, we don't want agile, but we want to have the agility.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But it's not all about costs, of course, because I also speak with organizations that say, like, we just have too much to do. I think a lot of organizations are struggling with lack of competent employers. So that means that they have to skill up or they have to buy in new people. But the whole happiness thing that we kind of shift aside is, of course, is embedded in that part as well. If you want your people to retain, really deliver output or attract new people, then the happiness is sure a thing, of course. But maybe it doesn't work if you go about and say, like, hey, I'm an agile coach, I'm going to work on team happiness. Or, hey, I'm an agile coach, I'm going to work on getting stakeholders involved. Yeah, sure, of course you should. But maybe that's not the first trigger nowadays with most decision makers that's going to hire you. But
So take me through that when you talk to potential clients and you have this conversation, and I would be on the other end of the table saying, listen, Derk-Jan, you are an expert at Agile. We tried it, didn't work. What are some short-term practices and examples you can give me to convince me or help me get across that chasm of seeing Agile doesn't work? So what are some practices, some examples you can give that I should focus on that will be less maybe happy teams, but more on the delivery end?
Yeah, funny, I asked the same thing to ChatGPT, and I came with a whole table with highlight stuff of practices and techniques that might help. So I'm just going to read out a few. So the CI/CD pipelines, according to ChatGPT. So if it's not right, it's not my problem. That's ChatGPT. The principle of customer satisfaction through early and continuous delivery can you achieve by CI/CD, because it automates repetitive tasks, reduce manual labors and errors. Welcome changing requirements, even late in the development cycle. And one of the key things is prioritization techniques like Moscow and weighted shortest job first, because it ensures focus on high value feed. And whether this is true or not, probably there are many things, because they seem to be true, right? So I was thinking, like, can I share such an important topic using ChatGPT? And then later on this morning, I thought, yes, please, because wouldn't I like, as an agile coach, my manager to come up with a stupid list and say, like, well, I Googled something with ChatGPT and this is what we should do because it's cost reduction. I find it important. Because then I could sit with him and say, like, wow, that's just AI talking. And yeah, it seems to be right, but why don't we do this a little bit more instead, or a little bit that? Or do you really think that this would work right now with the current stage of Agile that we have in this company? Should we not start somewhere else first? I think that will be swell. So in that case, there are many techniques, if you go into the big toolbox of Agile, that you can pick out and say, like, if you probably apply this single-handed, it will probably benefit you in a certain way with reducing costs or increasing quality or maybe being more efficient.
So essentially banking on the knowledge of AI to go, if AI gives us a large piece, then we can identify parts in that large answer that might apply to your business, and let's try that out.
Now, I could make this list myself, but the manager couldn't. So
I was going to say.
Yeah, but this was really quick because this was this morning. So I could, between waking up, having breakfast and having this call with you, I could make a list. So the manager can do it as well. So it's not about whether we should use AI or not, but there seems to be a way, just whether we do a lot of thinking or an easy thing together or alone. But the more important thing is, like, what will happen if we take out single-handed practices like CECD or prioritization techniques like Moscow or WSGF, and then start applying them in order to do cost reduction without taking the whole picture into account. And now I'm getting a little bit scared, to be honest, Bart.
Because you're sort of cherry picking kind of practices without trying to get
and earlier we were discussing a little bit, like, Agile is not flawed, it's the implementation that's not working. And very often the argument we used as Agile coach or Scrum Master was, like, it's not Agile, we should do it in a proper way. And if you only take the stand-up, you're not doing Agile, you're doing one practice of Agile. And of course it doesn't work that way. So if you don't understand what you're doing as a manager or a starting organization or a starting developer, but not a professional that knows all about it, and you're taking some cherries out and you're throwing some stuff out which you shouldn't have been thrown out, and it doesn't work, hey, of course it doesn't work because you don't understand it and you threw out the wrong bits and you implemented it poorly. And now I'm stating in the same call where I was saying this, like if we do some cherry picking and take out some techniques, then we can do cost reduction without actually having to worry about the whole transformation because it works as a single technique. And then we sell that. And I'm not sure what I'm doing now. So that's a bit like, what are we doing here? Should we do this? Should we not do that? But
it's a safe space, Derk-Jan. Safe space. We're all good.
Yeah.
But
so that's the water cooler talk, right? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
you can say whatever you want here. Say, what am I doing as Agile coach? I'm just cherry picking stuff now. But let's then turn the question around, and that's my final question to you, and then let Marcella take over here. But I bet you have a top 3 of things that you feel are critically important for any company interested in becoming more stable in their delivery. What would those 3 suggestions be in your mind?
I absolutely have a passion for what I call the supply lines and the export lines. The whole process of thinking what you want and the refinement and the portfolio management into planning is something which I really like.
Yep.
How can you take an idea, work it out, break it into small pieces, whatever you call them, and hand them out to the different teams or let the different teams select them, pull them towards them and integrate them again. So I'll call it supply line of ideas and work. And then the merging and the end is then the outlet again of the team. So I definitely have that. And I absolutely have a hate-love relationship with roles and responsibilities, etc. And although I am not really keen on that subject, every assignment, every book that I write has a lot of parts on like what are the roles and how should they interact with each other. And with one of my latest clients, the funny thing is like we were talking about roles, everybody said the roles are clear. The management also. So like, I don't understand the roles. The roles are clear. And then they show me a page or a few pages on Confluence. And only when you put them next to each other and say like, on this topic of responsibility, this person should play this role, this person should play that role, then suddenly you recognize that it's not clear and it doesn't work. And a lot of people don't really understand their role. And I think either you're an absolutely great team where you can hand over, toss the ball to each other at all time, and you're really multifunctional, but as soon as you get into more enterprise organizations and role becomes more important and responsibilities, I think if you don't understand if you're talking and what your true aim is, then you create a lot of noise and a lot of rumble, which if you eliminate that makes things much easier. So those are my 2 things.
Well, in the end, it should lead to cost reduction because you're focusing on a better way of doing it and doing the right thing. The classic Henrik Nieberg like triangle thing is the thing, build the thing right, build the right thing, and build it fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And every moment, every minute that we share talking about like what should you do, what should I do, that's your task, that's my task, or we're not doing that at all, and we're doing things double or not at all, is of course not efficient, it's not as cheap.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we come back to pretty much what I see as the core of Agile. I think roles and responsibility have become this whole workshop theme. However, it's still one of the major impediments that organizations and team face in not being efficient and open and honest about what they're doing.
Yeah, and to elaborate a little bit for the people who are watching this, maybe. I was talking about my last assignment where I put things next to each other. It was great fun because we had, in a certain time, we had a lot of people with double hats, right? They have double roles. And especially if people are not really very experienced or not really aware of that, and they're trying to save the day every day, but not thinking about how they do it, and they have double roles, it's much more difficult for them to distinguish between the one role and the other. And we had tech leads and chapter leads, where we in the end decided that the tech lead was working for the team and the chapter lead was working for the practice. But where we had some chapter leads, there were also tech leads, they didn't understand. So we had a lot of talks where suddenly like, yeah, but now you're saving the day, but you're talking about a team. I was talking with you as a tech lead. Tech lead's about the practice, not about a team. So as soon as you cross that and you start talking things about your team, you're no longer the chapter lead, you're the tech lead. I don't
Mm.
care. Save the day, please do. But it's different. It's a different game what you're playing.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks having these agonizing discussions, suddenly it clicked, and then a lot of things became much more clearer.
Yeah. Yeah. Final question to you, Derk-Jan, for a very personal, honest response. Do you think that we, as being part of the Agile industry, have ruined the industry for ourselves?
No, I think there are bigger
No.
things in politics that are much bigger than we did, how devastating it might have been.
Awesome. Yeah, agree. That's
Bart
good.
is smiling a little bit. How can I read your mind,
Yeah.
Bart?
No, it's just I enjoy those type of questions. I mean, did we ruin our own industry? And if I might put my own 2 cents in there, I think with any industry, especially one that has come up so quickly, right? So this has blossomed and all these different roles and frameworks and practices and guides and books and you name it. It's inevitable that you would have some people who are less competent, maybe, or doing things what they think would be best, but not always the right thing to do. And therefore, you get a lot of poor implementations. That's one part of it. The last part of it is what I found often is that the organization itself is impeding change.
Mm.
Because if you want to transform, so you become a different type of organization, you need to transform finance. You need to transform the way you do legal stuff. You need to transform the way you do HR stuff. And that is such a big leap that many companies go like, well, no, we believe in the
Maybe just do some
cross-functional
cherry
part and the
picking,
teams.
and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Mm.
you get it poorly implemented because you get traditional stuff. So example of it is yearly budgets. Whereas teams would like to prefer, I don't know, quarterly financial planning to set the portfolio correct and get some financials for that, rather than saying we need upfront to make a budget for the year to establish where we're going to put our finances in.
May I tell a funny anecdote about this?
Sure, please do.
Because one of my clients I was working with, they were having teams that were struggling with budget. So a lot of stakeholders were putting in money in order to
Sure.
finance the teams. But sometimes there wasn't enough, so there was some budget needed. So the team started shopping around in the
Yep.
business, like, I need some budget. Do you have some work for me? And then some other stakeholders said, oh, I want you to, if you can make this for me, I'm really happy. And I have some money for you. And then from portfolio perspective, suddenly the bigger organizations were like, what are you doing? Why are you working for them? I put money in, I want you to work for. Yeah, because I got some extra budget via the back door, and now I'm working for them as well. Those kind of silly things that can happen in bigger organizations.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Very
you're
true.
doing all kind of efforts in prioritizing and ensuring that you're only working on the key strategic teams, right? And then some team is just was shopping via the back door and making some extra things. It happens, probably still.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably still.
Which
Yeah, exactly.
which is actually making this a full circle conversation, because if we then look at Agile as a more cost reduction type of way, you mentioned, Derk-Jan, that the two major things that you say would be helping towards that goal is roles and responsibilities,
Yeah.
which is, in the anecdote that you just gave, clearly a misunderstanding. Roles and responsibilities were not clear.
Yeah.
And that, like, supply chain thinking of from the start of an idea to the implementation and then delivery of idea, or value stream idea mapping, if you want to call it that way. Those two are very much aligned with what you just mentioned in one anecdote, which is clearly not going well.
Thank you for pointing it out, because I wasn't aware of that. So awesome. Yeah.
Well, there we
cool.
go.
We got
You
a
have
full
good
circle.
story.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can safely say Agile is not dead. It might be declining, but more in a different way and a different need of Agile. Would you two agree that that's more the conclusion?
Yeah, I don't like your conclusion. So I wouldn't say, no, don't take me wrong. But I wouldn't like to talk about Agile being dead or not. So I believe Agile still has a lot of benefits. So it's not dead. Potentially it has a lot. But maybe it's the way that we put it forward should not be the same as it was 2 years or 3 years ago, because things have changed and people are looking for other things. So it's more finding the entry points within the organization that we still can do valuable and great work that we like so much. Then it's about having the discussion whether it's dead or not.
Gotcha. I guess we're
That's
saying
my
Agile
conclusion.
should, I think Agile should therefore adapt to feedback is what we're actually saying, aren't we?
A full circle in
Yeah.
a full circle in a full circle, I'm afraid. I'm happy with that. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. All right.
Great
Derk-Jan,
last
thank
words,
you
Bart.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. It can go on a what we call in the Netherlands on a tegeltje.
Yeah.
It was a great last summary of our
Yeah.
conversation.
For the people that are not from the Netherlands, we used to have a habit where we put all the wisecracks on a small tile and put it on the wall, and then everybody could read it and think about it once in a while.
There you go.
Awesome. Derk-Jan, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you, and I'm very keen to hear more of your insights and visions on this whole agile industry thing. So we might come back to you with a new topic to discuss.
Great. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. So it's
Awesome.
I'm a little bit thirsty, but we're next to the water cooler, so no problem. No, the pleasure was all mine, Marcella and Bart. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Make sure you tune in to our next water cooler chats.